Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me once again at the table. I'm Thomas Dodderwick, and joining me today is Deacon Pete Woelkers, who is the Director of Deacons, the Director of Deacon Formation, and the editor of The Harvest here in the Diocese of Great Falls-Billings. Deacon Pete, it is a pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
We're going to spend time today talking, while the harvest is important, that's not our topic today. Today is about deacons. And so let's just talk about what is a deacon, because a lot of people have no idea what a deacon is.
Deacons are ordained ministers in the church. They're ordained to be servants for to set an example for others of what our call to baptism as servants is to be for all of us. But they are ordained, so they have special grace that helps them to carry out this ministry. We have two types of deacons. There's permanent deacons, which are men who become ordained only to be deacons. And then there are transitional deacons, which are seminarians who are getting ready for ordination. Their last year, they're ordained as a transitional deacon. And so deacons perform a wide variety of different things for the church, both inside a parish or the formal organized church, and outside ministry. The Catholic Church has a strong and a long history going back to Saint Stephen and Philip that we hear about in the book of Acts, where they are hands are laid on them so they can serve the people. Anytime a deacon, for instance, goes to a hospital or to a jail or somewhere else, they're not really representing themselves. They're representing the church and the service that the church provides to others.
You mentioned that there are two different kinds of deacons, permanent deacons and transitional deacons. Is there a difference between those two besides the fact that one is simply on their way to ordination for the priesthood?
In reality, there isn't, because as far as the faculties and the things that they can do are the same. They're both ordained deacons. The difference, of course, is in the ministries they perform and the assignments, the type of things they will do.
Being ordained means that you've received the sacrament of holy orders. And priests also have holy orders. Bishops also have holy orders. What is the difference between your ordination and, say, an ordination of a priest or an episcopal ordination of a bishop?
Each one of them are ordained for different functions within the church. Obviously, bishops are ordained as is the shepherd. They're the primary teacher in a diocese or within their flock, and they have obviously they're ordained to do all the different things that both priests and deacons do as well. Priests are ordained to do basically sacramental ministry. Priests perform mass, and in reality, they're there to assist the bishop. All the things that a priest is ordained to do is to assist the bishop because there's not enough bishop to go around.
Sure.
The deacons are ordained to be servants. As we go all the way back to the early history of the church always felt compelled to provide ministry for the flock in the communities. And so the deacons were ordained specifically to do service, which is part of their ordination function. The other parts would be they're ordained to teach. And so because of that, you'll hear deacons occasionally give homilies at Mass. And of course, they will teach, and they teach in the name of the church and the bishop. The other thing they do is liturgical. They provide liturgical functions, baptisms, witnessing weddings, and those certain kind of sacraments that don't require either consecration or require the reconciliation or the confession function that only priests and bishops can do.
Priests and bishops, if you will, work for the church, are cared for by the church. Deacons are different you are an exception to the rule in most cases, by being employed by the church. And so speak a little bit more to, not only are they ordained to be servants, but they are offering a service to the church without really being compensated.
Deacons are, when they're ordained, there is no canon law or requirement to provide, a means of living, so to speak. Obviously, priests and bishops, because they're full-time, have to have that. Transitional deacons, in reality, are being supported by the church because they're seminarians,
Sure.
not because they're deacons. Deacons do not get paid. It's kind of a unique thing. We like to joke that, I'm going to get my pay doubled this year. But all the ministry that I do as a deacon, whether it be liturgical at the church, when I go up to the jail, when I work with the poor outside of the church, but I'm doing that as a deacon when I'm visiting the sick, all those are for no pay. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, deacons are not ordained till they're in their mid-30s, and part of that is so they will have their own livelihood that they can support their family and themselves while they do their ministry.
Let's talk a little bit about the diaconate specifically in the Diocese of Great Falls-Billings. How many deacons do we have, and what kind of ministry are they doing right here in eastern Montana?
We currently have 18. Most of them are older men. A couple of them have been deacons for 30 plus years, and they're moving into retirement status. But they do a wide variety of things. Some of the deacons work for the church, as I do myself as the director of deacons. We have one that's working as a parish administrator in a parish, and that gives him kind of a good inroad. The downside is he never gets away from the church. But we have one that's a parish life coordinator on one of the reservations. Maybe the most diaconal man I've ever met, and clearly a servant, and doing great work. We have deacons that are doing things like focus more on hospital ministry. We have a deacon that works in one of our Catholic schools as the counselor, but he's also a deacon assigned there, and he performs ministerial work right in the school. I'm not sure there's somebody who needs ministry more than young people nowadays.
Absolutely.
And so we have everything from farmers to people that have worked in refineries that are deacons, and most of them that do at least some ministry within the parish, liturgical or whatever. A lot of them are involved in jail ministry, working with the least among us, poor people. We have one that works with St. Vinny's a lot and does a lot of work with them.
I am sure you and all of our deacons were active in their parish prior to ordination. And so if a man is already active and engaged and serving his parish and the church universal, maybe even doing jail ministry, why take that step to be ordained as opposed to just keep doing what you're doing?
That's a tough question in a way, but it's actually an easy question. Ordination brings grace that the Holy Spirit works with that and gives you the things you need to do, especially when you're called as a deacon to do things that are outside what I call a comfort zone. I had done jail ministry a lot, but since I've been ordained, now I'm being called to all kinds of things. It might be somebody who's sick, somebody who's struggling with family issues, and they come to deacons like they come to priests and bishops because they represent the church. Mm-hmm. And people expect that they're going to get something that represents the faith and not just somebody else, something else. And so I really feel that alone is a strengthening thing, and it's amazing how that grace works in you to help you to do the things that, most of my day is doing things that I would have never gone to until God says, no, this is where you're going to be today. And so that's probably the biggest difference. From the other direction, when people approach in jail, I found this out after I was ordained, that people say he's a minister. So it's creates a little more trust. It creates a little more expectation that this is somebody who's prepared to help me in a spiritual way. And of course, we spend a lot of our energy and formation to make our deacons more spiritual and better prepared to deal with that. But the grace, once the hands are laid on, it's the most real thing that you'll experience, short of watching one of your children be born. That reality that, now you're working for God and you're working for the church becomes a real thing.
Deacon Pete, I thank you once again for joining me today to talk about the diaconate.
Well, thank you, and I do appreciate the opportunity.